I agree with Tim Dillon. You no longer have to live in Los Angeles or New York City in order to make it as an entertainer. Hello, everybody. Happy Monday. Well, growing up as an entertainer, going to school for acting, those were the two locations outside of the country, be it London, especially for theater, but Los Angeles or New York City were the two places you were going to be if you wanted to entertain the notion of working in the storytelling business as a professional. That's where the technology was. That's where the weather was best, especially in Los Angeles for film. And the studios have had a long track record of being a powerhouse distribution company to get the cream of the crop, the best, make some cool stuff and get it out there to the nation and to the world. All of this existed in this beautiful city, which I lived in for 10 years. And I was able to live in this city in two different phases of my life. But everything changed when the internet came along. And what's similar to this, if we look at the ripples of history, is the printing press. Gutenbergs printing press. Before the printing press was invented, everything was copied by hand. And this blew up the access to information across the literate world and also the illiterate world. The Bible in English was illegal, so there was an underground network, a Protestant movement for people to publish the Bible in English and use the printing press to do so. There's a book about William Tyndale, who was a martyr, burned at the stake for publishing the Bible in English. It is called Fire in the Bones. But through this Protestant movement and this breaking away from the state and the state religion, you have the Enlightenment and the founding of America. So the democratization of the information, the concentration of power was no longer with the state, but being democratized to the people because they had access to information. Knowledge is power. Or in the world of Mortal Kombat, there is no knowledge that is not power, which is just the negative of the first phrase. So in my personal experience with Los Angeles, I lived there first on a 2-year mission as a missionary, as an ordained minister. And during that time, I was in Compton, Watts, South Central, Inglewood, Linwood, Venice Beach, Redondo Beach, and Culver City. So I got to see a lot of the different places of Los Angeles, but most of my interactions were with people that were not involved in the entertainment industry, or 2 or 3 people removed from it, but they were there having a great life, doing the best they could with what they had. And I had a lot of fun getting to know those people outside of the proselytizing, and I'm no longer religious, nor do I subscribe to any Judeo-Christian God anymore. But I fell in love with the city and the culture that was there because it felt like the entire world was in one place. And I got to see different perspectives of the world because I got to work with the LAPD and work with the anti-gang unit to help kids get out of gangs, but then realize, wait, these kids are in gangs because the system is working against them the entire time. So do they want to be treated as second-class citizens while they try to navigate through this crazy world? Or do they want to sell drugs with their friends, make some money, and enjoy their lives now? I couldn't fault those kids. I understood why they were making those decisions. But I was trying to at least talk to them and say, this is what I'm doing with my life and my college education. But I know you're sick of school. School is a game that you have to play, especially in high school. It's a game you have to play. But if you're able to navigate that game, you can navigate the business world. That's where a lot of those gems are when it comes to the high school experience. And trying to connect with those kids on that real level, and for them to talk about their problems allowed me to have a real look at Los Angeles, not filtered through the news. And before I moved there, I thought, oh, well, this is America. Everybody should speak English. Then I met families that escaped from civil wars and came to this country to make a better life for their kids. And I thought, yeah, I would probably do the same thing. And so I speak Spanish. It's good to learn another language. Why not? So my mind was opened to what the world had to offer before even leaving the United States by living in Los Angeles. So this isn't a knock on the beauty of the city and the people that live there. This is just the power that this city has or had, and the executives and their gatekeeping of any content being released to the world outside of these channels, and how the internet has changed all of that. Now, I studied to get a bachelor's of fine arts in acting. I got my associates and then my bachelor's. Top of my class. But coming out of Virginia, I really had two options, either go to New York or go to Los Angeles. I had a job offer in New York and Los Angeles, and after graduating with my bachelor's degree, I took a minimum wage job at a studio, NASL. But luckily, we were able to land a couple more contracts. I was able to get a salary, and I grew from there and grew my brand during college doing MLG events, but then full-time with NASL and continuing to go from there. And it's been a wild ride that entire decade. But during that time studying, it was either one of those two cities was the option, and the internet distribution system still was in its infancy, if people were even going to make it a thing, because there was still this trauma from the dot-com bubble burst that happened like 10 years before. During this podcast, the podcast with Whitney Cummings and Tim Dillon, Whitney Cummings says that LA is dumb. The system is dumb. It takes forever for them to come around to things, and they'll finally get it if they understand that there's money to be made. And that's 100% true. That is 100% true. I had a number of meetings with studio executives that were nice, but out of touch. Clueless, like they didn't even do any research before they came to the meeting with us. They wanted us to explain everything and do all the heavy lifting, and then they would get the credit, right? Well, that happens in the nature of the business. You know, when you work for a company that's doing a white label operation for somebody else, the ones that hired you, they're the ones that get all the credit. When you continue to have these meetings or talk to folks that are really there to promote a movie or to promote what they're doing, there's ways to work with them. And we had some fun, exciting projects that actually felt authentic to the audience. But there were a number of times where we'd be talked down to, or they felt like they had to talk a different language to us when we're like, hey, we watch the same movies you do. We watch the same television shows you do. The only other difference is we occupy our time not with maybe as much sports, but actually playing video games. And that wasn't even true. Other people are huge sports nuts and still play video games. So it was trying to explain to these executives and to old Hollywood that you don't have to, the only difference is the distribution. That's the only difference. You know, I'm not watching this on Channel 4 or Channel 5. I'm watching this on Twitch or YouTube. But the nature of the programming isn't changing. And Tim Dillon talks about that in the podcast, saying, you know, Postmates isn't delivering something foreign to you that you never had. No, it's delivering meat and potatoes, the same thing your grandfather ate. Because it's not, enjoying the entertainment is not going to change with the nature of humans. It's how the entertainment gets to them. And that's why LA is just taking forever to realize this, and why streaming services took forever to get here, and why HBO Max, before that, you know, HBO Now, took forever to happen. I remember during college, there was a number of times I thought, why do they not have Game of Thrones available as a subscription service or a standalone purchase fee? Because I'm not going to buy cable for HBO. So people were turning to piracy. Well, finally, years later, HBO came around. And now look, it's the streaming war. And those of us 10 years ago who were already making a living on the internet knew that this was going to be the next thing. This was going to be the nature of the audience moving towards this way of enjoying content, because they could watch what they want to watch, when they want to watch it, wherever they want to watch it, however they want to watch it. And that's the beauty of technology today, and realizing that you don't have to produce only in this city or New York City. Channels, you know, there's still like language and deals and understandings of television back when color was new, and channels are desperate for views. They are desperate for the millennial Gen Z audience, and we're not coming. We're already on the internet. We're not leaving. You have to come to us. We don't need television. And I'm so over working with dumb clients. You know, respectfully, I had a client one time on a phone call say, what is broadcasting? And I thought, I'm sorry, I didn't say this, but I just thought, if you cannot even Google a couple vocab words that are going to be in the call, what are we doing? What are we doing? Anyways, it wasn't always that bad. I'm harping on the very difficult days, but they were, because it felt like all of the efforts that we were doing online were completely discounted because it was online. And that has changed, thankfully, over the years. But the online format is a better format when it comes to flexibility and accessibility. And that's where the online audience, that's their expectation, is to be able to have that. Let's take a look at a specific example that I had when it came to working with the CW. Now, I am very proud of this body of work that we had with the Machinima's Chasing the Cup CW event. It was one of very few video game tournaments or any piece of video game content that made it to network television. And our event, according to the stats here, with 772,000 tuning into season 1, during the Grammys, we had our season 1 finals. Okay, that's really tough programming. We were able to bring that in. Right, on top of all the internet views, it was a substantial amount. I think at the end of the third season, we were looking at like 23 million views overall, and it's still climbing because all the VODs still exist. Anyways, so when we were doing the CW event, we weren't paid extra. Okay, we were paid our fee that ESL was paid from CW or from the WB to do the event, but then they added the CW stuff on top, and they asked me to do the voiceover work, and Brett Beeling and I and Brian Compton oversaw pieces of the edit to make sure it would pass the bar for the FGC, for the fighting game community, and for television, along with working with the television people. We were paid zero, nothing extra for that, right? But you feel like, oh, we're going to make it to television. It's going to be network television. This is amazing, right? It's that whole promotional thing. So it was a bit disheartening to go through that, but also to read this in a press release from Mr. Haskins, who is one of the executives at the CW. He said the actual Mortal Kombat X Finals event is 8 hours long. Well, that's with the top 16, the whole bracket. Yeah, it's a day event, kind of like a festival or a convention, which is what the FGC has its roots in. Haskins said, God love him, but I didn't want to do 8 hours of that on television. Nobody asked you to. I never met with you. You never called me. You never talked to my executive team. Because we had it laid out exactly how we wanted to do it for television. We would have top 16 during the day, take a break, and then either the top 8 or the top 4 finals be either a 3-hour or 2-hour televised event. And how do I know that format works? Because we did that format on ESPN2 and we did that format on TBS. So this is what really irked me during my experience working in the studio business at first, because we were still trying to prove ourselves. But they didn't respect us enough to be part of the phone call where we could have explained this. So when we saw this article, my colleagues and I cringed. We thought, oh my gosh, this is exactly why television is so antiquated. Nobody asked for this. We all know 8 hours would never work on television. Television is a 2 to 3 hour format. 3 hours is pushing it. You know, that's what you get with ads when you watch Lord of the Rings. So this moment right here, again, was like, what? I thought you guys are supposed to be coming from the world of professional understanding of storytelling, right? So anyways, we got through it. We did a season 2. We got good numbers for what we were trying to do, but this doesn't belong on television. It belongs on the internet. The final format that they did in order to make it into like a documentary style, I really enjoyed, and I liked the flavor they brought there, and that was the producer expertise, I believe, of Tony. I forget his last name, I'm sorry, but they brought him in, and he had come from the television world. So in order for them to package it to the television language, we were totally on board with that because we understood we had to package this for the television language. But yeah, 8 hours would never work on television. 8 hours barely works on the internet, which is why we have our dedicated top 8 or top 4 finals for our major Mortal Kombat events. But I wanted to share this because this was just the difficulty of so many middle people between us, where we easily could have had a phone call with the executives and told them there's multiple formats we could have done for television. And we have since. So we've proven ourselves. Mr. Haskins had to balance a lot of different ideas and programming, and he took a risk on us, so I applaud that. But next time, hey, the people that are working in the trenches have some good ideas. So don't discount them, and don't have anybody talk I don't want to say in spite of us, but talk for us when they don't fully understand the vision, and folks, you're gonna feel this, and no matter what you do in life, you're gonna think a certain way, you're gonna see an outlook of how the show looks or the project looks, whatever, but you have to be able to communicate that to the rest of your team and to other people, and you have to double your efforts to communicate it properly and to go over it again and again, and to do it step by step, beat by beat, so they are on board with the whole picture. If you just tell them and bark at them, they're not going to be on board, or they're not going to really put their 100% effort into it. They have to feel that their ideas are also adding to it, and the best ideas are winning, right? Anyways, yeah, paid zero money extra for doing this stuff on television, but It was the cheapest way possible. And at the end of the day, Warner Brothers owns the IP. So if they own the IP, they technically can do anything they want with the content that they have. So they didn't do anything wrong or outside of the contract. It just was one of those things of like, oh, you're going to say this is a great promotional thing for me and pay me nothing for the television experience. Get it. Got it. Good. We're non-union. See? This is how we're able to slip in and fill that type of content and programming, is because we're cheap and non-union. So they're able to get away with using that content and the talent and doing it. Again, I'm not like condoning nor condemning. It's the nature of the beast and the nature of the business at that time. I'm going to bring up one of my favorite comedians in the world is outside of Tim Dillon in a second to talk more about this and the role of Hollywood and contracts. So this is a podcast that I want everybody to watch. Whitney Cummings, Good For You podcast number 69. And you need to be following Tim Dillon because he is one of the funniest comedians out there. But he gives prime examples of why the internet is the place to be as an artist and how you can make a living with your dedicated audience. And he's doing that through Patreon and other appearances and his YouTube channel with his show. But Whitney Cummings is a very successful comedian, very successful producer. I am incredibly proud of her body of work because she's been able to navigate the sitcom world, which is a dated world, and really make a name for herself and really put out some great content. When she does the podcast and stuff online, it's a different world. She's way more, she talks about being way more exposed to things compared to when you work for a major studio on a major show. You're surrounded by this bubble of lawyers and protection and whatnot, and they detail that. But the old world is both on its way out, but the old world of Hollywood, it's on its way out, and people will still enjoy it, but we don't live in the same world. We don't live in the same media world where we don't have to consume all the same stuff because there's not 3 channels or 4 channels anymore. I can watch the stuff that I want to watch. You can watch what you want to watch. And the entertainers that we're watching in our different realms are making enough money based off their audiences that they're making a living, right? The biggest thing, though, between the connection of Tim Dillon to his audience or what he's advocating for is that there's no more middlemen. There's no more middle people. You're in a room of 8 people making decisions. 5 of those people don't need to be there. The difference in the collective group making a decision really changes when you have a 3rd, 4th, 5th, 6th opinion. The audience recognizes if you are behind 2 or 3 layers of protection on social media or your creative endeavors. Not that it's a bad thing, but there is a hunger for authenticity naturally on the internet. I know, right? The digital world and all these fake trolls craving authenticity, especially from our comedians. Well, at least in the circles that I run in my fandom. And Dave Chappelle and Tim Dillon are some of the comedians that just tell the raw truth. And you can disagree with the way that they say it, or you may even disagree with them, but they do have a point. They do have a point. And Tim Dillon's crazy. He's funny. But the number one thing that Dave Chappelle has represented is, being somebody to navigate that Hollywood world, but then leaving it and taking a break for 12 years and coming back and doing it his way. And look at the powerhouse that he is and his wonderful videos on YouTube where he describes, especially a redemption song, where he describes that the audience is his boss, and he asks the audience to not tune into Chappelle's show on Comedy Central because overall he got a raw deal. And it worked. And there was an individual that worked over at Viacom, the parent company of Comedy Central, and he wanted to enact justice along with a lot of other people our generation based off of things that happened in the past. So the just overall understanding of what's at stake, what you're going to be exposed to, how to navigate the crazy minefield, both in the craziness that can happen behind closed doors and also what can happen online, navigating the minefield of keyboard cowboys and cowgirls tearing you down, and also navigating those closed doors of contracts or awkward situations that you don't have the power to make your dreams come true in the moment, but you have the power to say no. There are times where you have to come to grips with that and what you're willing to delay. I wouldn't say give up, but to delay. The overall thing is you can't have a brittle spirit. Echoing what Dave Chappelle said. My parents, luckily enough, told me if you want to pursue this entertainment life, it's going to be lonely, harsh, a lot of rejection. And I said, okay, let's do it. Let's do it. And I've been very proud of the body of work and the experiences that I have made so far. And I feel like I've only gotten started. Hopefully a lot of us feel that during a pandemic. But the online world, you really have to navigate the minefield of keyboard cowboys and cowgirls and recognize that those that share their opinion online about you, it still hurts your feelings when you read it, but that opinion is not as important as somebody who pays your paychecks or your friend or somebody who knows you in real life, who's sat down and had a conversation with you, who's had a human connection with you. That is always more valuable than what any mob online has to say. One of the really important lessons that I learned in college is that all you need is 1,000 true fans. Authenticity is more important than production value. Entertainers are streaming to hundreds of thousands of people, and 1,000 true fans are people that are willing to spend $100 on you, your product, your brand, a year. After taxes, that's $60,000 in your pocket. That's a livable amount of money in most of the United States, roommate or no. It's livable for me, at least. But the old Hollywood versus new media, with the tax breaks, more filming locations, Louisiana, Atlanta, Wilmington, Virginia. Why would you go through this game of diluting your talent, talking to showrunners when you can entertain fans with the tools at your disposal? And that's what Tim Dillon champions. He entertains his fans with the tools at his disposal. And that's what you can do. That's what I've been doing since the pandemic began. Before then with my Twitter and YouTube and stuff, but not as dedicated to grow my own brand. But this has been part of the plan, or thinking about the plan, for the last 3 years. One of the major reasons why I left ESL and left LA was because I was able to reduce my overhead costs, live in a location with great internet speeds, and grow my own brand without forsaking the relationships that I have. I'm not far from the airport. I can go fly down and do an event in California or fly out to Chicago. And stand-up comedians, which I want to dabble more in, not because I think I could, I don't know if I'd be great at it or not, but it would help me be an overall better host, and I can respect the art form that much more. Anyways, that doesn't shut down my entertainment possibilities. And obviously, I had been hosting and traveling and doing work after having moved here and left LA 3 years ago. So you can be anywhere, just as long as you have quality internet. Burbank sucks for internet. It really did. My upload speeds were 5. In order for me to get something higher, I had to pay so much more money. Now, mentioning another podcast that I love to watch, Fat Man Beyond, with Kevin Smith and Mark Bernardin. Kevin Smith is having issues with his internet, and he can't get any improvements unless Hollywood Boulevard is shut down, which requires 3 years of permits in order to lay a line underneath the boulevard to improve the internet for the Hollywood Hills, or at least his location, unless he gets satellite. That sucks. That creates a really tough scenario if a producer or a brand comes to them and says, hey, we want you to keep doing the live show, or we want you to do another live show specifically for this. Can you do it? Kevin Smith is not in a position to do it unless they came to the cantina, or unless they were able to go to a spot that had more dedicated internet. That sucks in a pandemic, which again is so important to have the best internet you can have at the location that you're at. This is super important. This is why I have this speed. This is my speed. The budget that I have for this is $80 a month with CenturyLink. 900 down. It's 900. It's 1,000, but it fluctuates a little bit. It's a gig. It's a gig each. This allows me to upload way faster, have way better gameplay, all sorts of things necessary for the modern world of technology. And for me to upload a video off this speed takes me minutes, where in Burbank it would take me hours, tens of minutes if not hours. And that makes all the difference. What matters the most is the talent and the technology you have on hand. That's what matters the most. Marketing will come after you made the content. You grow a small audience daily. I've even noticed a small difference in my YouTube channel having daily content, even if I pre-recorded it, just release something once a day. Leverage that small audience for small gigs. Once I'm able to monetize my YouTube and I get up to 2,000 subscribers, then I'll contact a few smaller brands and say, hey, what can we do together? I have my own goals I want to hit through my daily content, but then the outreach goals after that. And that's where you can get more people working with you. As a business, I have all these accolades and all this wonderful body of work, but as a brand, we're still growing. My brand is still growing on my channel and my social medias. Hollywood will come around. Whitney Cummings talks about this as well. They'll eventually come around. It takes them a while. Like, let's get the Mortal Kombat finals on HBO Max. But overall, folks, television is antiquated. And television needs us a lot more than we need them. So please watch this podcast at your homework. I want you to, write in the comments and tell them I sent you. But let me know in the thoughts below. Do you feel that it's still necessary if you want to pursue a life in the online world of entertainment to live in either one of these cities? No. If you do, however, want to focus heavily on film and be surrounded by people in that world, move to Atlanta, move to Louisiana, or move to Los Angeles or Vancouver, Canada. If you want to do theater, you can do theater in some major cities and get a real good start. Seattle, Norfolk, Virginia, there's conservatory theaters. But if you really want to study theater, really want to study it outside of a university, New York City or London or Australia, possibly, the conservatory stuff. Because there's wonderful assets and history and tools at your disposal for that in-person event, like a theatrical event. But when it comes to a podcast, stand-up comedy, and other forms of art, you can do it from almost anywhere as long as you have the best internet possible. It's a crazy world. It's still the Wild West in many respects, and looking back and seeing how our tools, talent, and expertise was taken advantage of because we weren't part of a union. Yeah, it stings, but you learn. You learn to navigate those minefields, and you look to other people as mentors, even mentors from afar, people like Dave Chappelle, that you can look up to and go, you do the right thing, and eventually it'll all work out. Thanks as always for tuning in. Hit that like button, subscribe if you can. If you can spare $1, it goes a long way. Patreon, Venmo, Cash App, Mr. Joshua Gray. I will see you online.